Hi, I'm Don at DG Recruit. Today I wanted to share with you a few reasons why having nothing is your biggest asset. Now that statement in and of itself sounds ridiculous. Sounds a little utopian, sounds a little la la land, doesn't sound real. However, from someone who came from nothing and got here into my current situation as an entrepreneur, investor, headhunter, I wanted to share with you how my journey started because it's so much fun to reflect on how things were and how things are now. And the journey has been so fulfilling. So when I graduated college, I had student debt. I had really no future ahead of me. I had a lot of worries and I had a lot of financial pressures. And when I got into recruiting, my base salary was so low. It was $35,000 at the time. Even in 2011, that wasn't a lot of money. And I was living in New York City, that I really had to think clearly about how my future would be and how much harder I would have to work to get somewhere. And that's what I mean by having nothing and starting from scratch. It's one of the best feelings ever because it's so challenging, motivating, and the future is so bright. It can only literally go up from here. It can't get any lower. So that's the whole point of today's video, is to just let you know, for all the people out there who are struggling, who are starting from ground up, who really have nothing really to go off of, is that we all started there. Those of us that weren't born into wealth, those of us that made our wealth, we had to start somewhere. And wherever you're starting from, that's your biggest asset, because what you're going to have at that moment is desire and drive. That desire and drive is one of the most fundamental human qualities that value and define your life. So if you were born into this world, into a rich family, like many people I saw in my life, they were not blessed with nothing. Because they weren't blessed with nothing, they achieved nothing much because there was no need to do so. So if you look at it from that angle, having nothing is a huge asset because it drives your motivation in a way that other people would not. It's a competitive edge that you have, for better or for worse. I used to be jealous of people around me in college and in elementary school. I grew up, for God's sake, in a rich person's home. My family were immigrants to the US in the mid-90s, and they had nothing coming here. Really just $40, literally. These were the days that a lot of immigrants that came here for school really had nothing, because at that point, all the countries were not developed. Today, it's obviously a different story. But back then, my parents had nothing. So when they came to the US, how were they supposed to live? How were they supposed to survive? Well, they figured, why don't we be babysitters to rich people? So I literally grew up my entire life living in a rich person's home for the first, 5 years of my living memory as a kid. That did not give me a sense of inferiority or any sort of complex. I didn't notice it that much. I mean, subconsciously, I knew that we were poor. But realistically, I went to a school with rich kids. And my parents were really, I'm very grateful to them. They were always very encouraging to me. They always told me, look, don't worry about it. You're always going to be equal in the eyes of the world. You can be the same person. You can have the same level of opportunity. Don't ever let your, level of wealth define who you are. So they were always encouraging to me to make me feel that I wasn't inferior. Never taught me to bow down to others. They were very strong people, and I'm grateful for that. And so growing up from that kind of environment, then I go to high school where, again, my parents are old school immigrants. So they're not giving me, name brand items. I'm not wearing nice clothes. I'm not wearing nice things. I'm wearing, $5 pants. I'm wearing $3 t-shirts from stores like Rainbow and Trello or Tello's. This was back in the 2000s in Boston. So we had Tellos, I guess. So we were really kind of bottom of the barrel there too. And then I go to college and I see my college friends coming from international schools who grew up with plantations, for God's sakes, who are ambassadors' children, who, were so far more well off than I could ever imagine. They would wear Louboutin shoes. I didn't even know what Louboutins were. And obviously, now I can buy my own, but back then it was just like, how do people spend hundreds of dollars on this stuff? And my classmates would have loads of these things. Some students I knew were so rich that when it came to the end of semester, their parents would just bounce. They would bounce. They would leave every single item in the house and say, literally, go and take anything you want. That's the kind of wealth that I was surrounded by. While I couldn't afford to buy books, while I couldn't afford to eat out, the only way I was about to be affordable to do that was to make that money myself. So having nothing teaches you very early on how to hustle, how to make something of yourself, because you have nothing. And if I didn't have that, I think I would be very, very mediocre. So my point to you is, no matter where you're starting in your recruitment career, don't look around and look at all the other people. I knew when I started in recruiting, I would look at my classmates around me, or college, I keep saying that, but colleagues, right? My colleagues around me. And they would come in with Chanel watches. They would come in with Cartier bracelets because our base salaries was $35,000. So a lot of the kids starting in recruiting came from money, and they were just like doing the job for the sake of doing their job. But guess what? I had that extra drive. I had that extra desire to prove myself, because finally I had an opportunity in front of me that would give me a commission possible lifestyle where I could be making doctor money without having to go to doctor school, without having to get any further education, because I was sick of not making it through life in terms of financial opportunity. So again, keep that in mind. Having nothing, that's the funnest part, because your goal there is to go from 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000. That's the funnest journey. And I remember getting to my first 100,000. That was the funnest journey, because it was just like a game. You could do it. There's nothing to lose. Because once you get to 100, once you get to 200, at that point, it's no longer fun anymore. It's just strategy at that point. At that point, it's just like business. It's just like, okay, I got to step up. That's a different game. But when you start off with 0 and you go to your first 50,000, your first 60,000, 70, 80, 90, that's the fun of the game. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I hope that motivates you today. No matter where you are in life, remember that having nothing is your biggest asset.